So, guys, and you touched on this in the press conference today, but I wanted to ask you about everyone keeps talking about when this is over. What does the end look like to you?
Yeah. Well, we all want this to be quote unquote over as soon as possible. I mean, this is just killing our economy. People can't support themselves to earn their rent. But all we can do to bring about that end sooner right now is stay at home and squash this thing. And when we do return to more normalcy, it's not going to be exactly like it was. I mean, it might be that workplaces are spaced out a little bit more. It might be that shifts are staggered. It could be that more people are telecommuting on a regular basis. So it's going until there's a vaccine or a cure. And we all hope, and there's scientists working on it, and maybe that'll be next month, but more likely it'll be 10 months, 12 months, 16 months. So there's going to be a lot of these precautions that we have to take for a period of time after we get everything open as soon as possible.
So you don't see the end being one day you just come out and announce at a press conference, we're back open for business.
We hope,
Restaurants
Sean.
you can open. Everybody can come out of their house.
If there's a cure or there's a vaccine, then that day could be sooner. Now, a vaccine that would have to be administered to people, and that alone could take weeks or months. But the scientists working on it, and trying to set expectations are saying, 12 months would be fast to get to a vaccine. We're hoping it's even faster. There had been some work done on similar coronaviruses like SARS that might be applicable, so it's not without any possibility that it couldn't be a matter of a few months. But we're not pinning our hopes on that, nor are we pinning our hopes on a cure. There could be some drugs that have some therapeutic impact, but you're talking about a minor therapeutic impact. They're not game changers, they're not cures. So what we have to do now is find the way to get to that normalcy where people can go to work, earn a living, hike, go about their activities with these additional ways of being safe. And that's what we hope to get to as soon as we can in Colorado. The sooner we can get there as a state, the sooner we can get there as a nation, the better. But, President Trump indicated it's unlikely that social distancing will end before April 30th. Currently, our order in Colorado goes to April 11th. It would be very painful to extend that, but if the data shows we need to extend that, then we're going to extend that so that we can save lives and reduce this disruption to our productivity.
Now, you talked about this too, the importance of mass testing.
Yeah.
So a lab in Colorado Springs says it had CDC approval to process 1,300 tests a day. I have heard that you have a plan for mass testing. If so, could you share what that will look like? If not, why not use this lab?
We're working rapidly on expanding testing. I mean, 1,300 a day will help, but that's not mass testing. That might not even meet the needs of El Paso County. It depends. We need to get to the place where we're able to isolate those who have the virus. And what that means, Sean, and this is very important, is not everybody who is contagious has symptoms. And that's the key role that mass testing will need to play. Some say it's 25%, it could be as much as 50% of people who contract this virus and are contagious might not show any symptoms or very, very minor symptoms they might miss. That's why this stay-at-home piece is so important now. It's the only action we have. But once we get to the mass testing, and Colorado is going to be among those very first states as we scale this up, that will allow us to better contain people who might be contagious.
You have a plan that you will be rolling out soon?
We're working on that plan for expanding the testing capacity rapidly. It's one of the wildly important goals of our innovation unit. We brought in top leadership from the private sector, from venture capital, from companies that have grown from 10 people to 200 people in a year. But even those high growth companies, Sean, that's slow compared to what we need to do here. And I come from the private sector. I've grown companies from 0 to 200 in a period of 6 or 7 years. We have people that have done it faster than that. They've grown from 10 to 200 in a year. But that is not fast enough for what we need here. So we're trying to get the very best people, getting them in place, getting the plan in place to be able to have Colorado return to economic normalcy, social normalcy as soon as possible. We use the word normalcy because it's not normal. It's not the way it was. It's not the way we interacted 3 months ago. It might mean we're not shaking hands for some time. It might mean more people are wearing masks. It might mean workplaces are more spaced out. But we've got to at least get back to closer to normalcy than this extreme stay-at-home order, which we know people can only only endure for so long, and we're asking people to endure it right now through April 11th. If that needs to go another week, it'll go another week, but we know that people need to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
You mentioned that you've been working with business contacts in in Asia, basically, to get some more tests, to get some of this PPE. I couldn't help but think Senator Gardner is chair of the Southeast Asia Subcommittee, and I know that you guys talk a lot. I haven't asked him this, but has he been able to help in this area?
As an example, Senator Gardner was able to provide us with some testing providers in South Korea that we were able to work to establish relationships on. But part of the problem, Sean, is that everybody across the world is trying to buy these things at the same time we are and implement them in various stages. Some states are behind where Colorado is. Some countries are ahead of where America is, and other countries are behind where America is. But it is a global free-for-all around the acquisition of both the personal protection equipment as well as the testing equipment. So certainly the Consul General of Japan, Senator Gardner, many CEOs that have long-term supply relationships in China have helped us with introductions, but we're still very much competing in this dog-eat-dog world to try to get the supplies we need here in Colorado.
So the state's budget, I need to tell you, has taken an enormous hit because of this. Why have you not closed some part of state government at this point and furloughed some of those workers and tightened the belt for the state too?
People need to know that these basic core functions that the state provides are still occurring. There's some that are 24/7, meaning we need to have our prison guards, our youth detention facility folks, our long-term care facility folks. They need to be physically present. They can't telecommute. And they can't not work. So I want to thank all of them, just as we're also thanking our nurses, our paramedics, our healthcare professionals for stepping up. Many other state workers are able to telecommute, and we're now between 70 and 80% of state workers that are working from home. It's going to be a very tough budgetary environment for the state, just as it should be, because it's a tough budgetary environment for your family and other families across the state. There's going to need to be some belt tightening across the board, and the better we're staying at home now, the less belt tightening we'll need to do, because the more we're squashing the virus and being able to return to productivity, economic normalcy sooner rather than later.
Do you see avoiding furloughs, though, of state employees?
Well, we're evaluating the federal recovery package that includes help for families, $1,200 per person. For families under $150,000 a year in income, $500 per child. They're going to get that in the next few weeks. Emergency help for small businesses. Also some help for the states and for Denver that are facing some of these increased expenses too, as well as help for hospitals, which are fronting the costs on a lot of this expansion and will be reimbursed under this Federal Recovery Act. There's also talk of another bill that might be considered by Congress to help grow the economy as well.
Have you identified at this point alternative sites for hospitals, hospital beds?
We've been working very closely with the providers, the hospitals, UC Health and Kaiser and all of the others. We've worked with them on their own capacities. Some of them are able to convert their ambulatory care centers or centers that did elective work into ICU beds and hospital beds. All of that work is occurring in real time. Scott Bookman, the director of that medical surge, updated the public in our press conference today, which you can also view.
Right. He didn't mention a specific place. I had heard possibly Budweiser Center is a place that you could...
Yeah, we're happy to roll those out as those decisions are made and the work commences. As Scott Bookman said, some of them will look somewhat like what's happening in Central Park. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be outdoors. We might have the indoor capacity here. They don't have in Manhattan. I think we do. But those will be rolled out and be available to the public as they're announced.
You talked about the Monday night quarterbacking that goes on. CDPHE, you're aware, shows that there were people experiencing symptoms even in mid-February. Hindsight is always 20/20, but looking back, would you have responded quicker? Do you wish you had done something quicker?
Well, we know that this is a very severe step of stay at home. People can only endure that for a few weeks. And so we want to have that few week period during the period of maximum impact, which means not unnecessarily early, because then you're reopening just as the virus is starting to spread, and not too late. So we use the best science and data we have to target this most radical thing that can be done, which is people staying at home, to be the minimum length and to be timed during the optimal time, that optimal period to reduce the spread. If we did it too early, it would need to last unnecessarily long. If you did it too late, the cost in lives would be astronomical. So we're doing our best with the data we have every day to try to make sure that we can return to economic normalcy and allow people to support themselves, and at the same time making sure that Coloradans don't lose their lives because we don't have the equipment in place and the beds in place that could save them.
Are you worried you'll get COVID?
Well, I think it's certainly possible that I will, and likely that I will. Many Coloradans will. I already have one friend that's hospitalized for it, other friends that have tested positive for it. This is going to touch us all. Whether you get it or not, Sean, whether I get it or not, Sean, I guarantee you that many members of our friends and family will get it, and some of those will have to be hospitalized. Some might lose their lives, others will be saved because we've been able to increase the capacity around the beds and the ventilators.
So this is surreal for all of us, but for you, what has it been like? What do your days look like? What do your nights look like?
Well, like most parents, and you're a parent too, Sean, one of the things you notice is your kids are home all day, right? You thought there was going to be 1 week of spring break. The kids are home all the time. And not only are they home, the activities where you normally took them out, the bouncy castle or the hikes, those are not, advised right now. In fact, most of them are closed. So you can't even go to the bookstore. So we're staying home. Like everybody, once a day or twice a day, we're trying to get folks outside to get a little air, our kids, our dog. But that's tough, and at the same time, I'm balancing everything we need to do from the state, like many people, telecommuting where I can, which is most of the time, and then showing up where I need to at the Emergency Operations Center, where we are now in Centennial, and to make sure that the public is aware of what they need to do to help save lives and reduce the duration of this crisis.
How much sleep are you getting?
Well, I have to check my phone several times during the night. Again, there's people all over the world in the supply chain that we're dealing with. There's alerts coming in at all hours. I'm trying to stay as well rested as I can so I can be on my game to do what we need to do to make sure that Colorado is as best prepared as possible.
So we talked about what the end would look like to you. What does the recovery look like to you?
The sooner that we can return to work, the less the economic damage will be, but the economic damage is going to be enormous, not just because of Colorado, not even just because of America, but globally. This pandemic is creating a recession that we have not seen the likes of. Colorado, in some ways, is more vulnerable because one of our leading industries is the tourism and recreation and travel industry, which instantly went from 100% to 0%. And while many industries are suffering, this one has been zeroed out. That'll be a slow recovery over time, and really won't be able to fully recover until there's a vaccination or cure, which could be a matter of many months. We have to plan to return to other normal measures before then, before the tourism sector can recover, and before people can start visiting our world-class resorts again. But what that will mean is additional distancing measures that will make sure that we roll out in a way that keep people safe, but allow them to earn a paycheck to support themselves. The more that we're able to stay at home now, the less severe and the shorter all those measures will have to be. So that's why my advice to people is stay at home. Even again, if you're sick, this is frustrating to people because I have a cold, shouldn't I get tested? Don't run out. Don't go out and panic. Just relax. It may be COVID, it may be not. If it is COVID, it's 9 in 10 chance you won't need medical intervention. And if you do, don't hesitate to call it in. If you can barely breathe or having trouble or fever above 105, don't call it in. But if you're just suffering flu-like symptoms, assume that you have it, stay at home, isolate, and don't see any other people until several days after your last symptom has gone away.